A simple woman denied boarding first class. Security called. Humiliation mounted. Then she made one call to her billionaire husband. "Edward, they're refusing to let me board." Faces paled as she handed the phone to the manager. "Remove her? Number, I'm removing all of you from your jobs." Grace Wellington moved through JFK Airport with the practiced ease of someone who had traveled all her life. Unlike many of the business travelers rushing past in designer suits and expensive shoes, Grace preferred comfort over luxury. Today she wore a simple black sweater with subtle patterns, dark jeans, and comfortable walking shoes. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her only jewelry was a thin gold wedding band. The terminal bustled with morning activity. First-class passengers lined up at priority check-in counters, while economy travelers formed longer queues nearby. Digital boards overhead displayed departure times for flights to destinations across the globe. The air smelled of coffee and cinnamon from nearby cafes. Grace approached the first-class counter for Atlantic Airways, ticket in hand. She'd been looking forward to this trip for weeks. Edward was already in San Francisco closing a major business deal, and she was joining him for a short vacation afterward, their first in nearly a year. "Next passenger, please," called the attendant, a woman in her mid-30s with a crisp blue uniform and perfect makeup. Her name tag read, Veronica Palmer. Grace stepped forward and placed her ticket and ID on the counter. "Good morning. Flight 1077 to San Francisco, please." Veronica glanced at Grace's casual attire, her gaze lingering disapprovingly on the comfortable shoes. With barely disguised skepticism, she examined the first-class ticket. "And how did you obtain this ticket, ma'am?" Grace raised an eyebrow. "My husband booked it for me." "I see." Veronica's voice carried a note of doubt. She typed something into her computer, her acrylic nails clicking against the keyboard. "There seems to be an issue with your reservation. This ticket shows a first-class seat, but I'm not seeing the proper coding." Grace maintained her composure. "There shouldn't be any issue. My husband confirmed everything yesterday." Veronica's lips thinned. "Well, there's clearly a problem. Do you have the credit card this was purchased with?" "No, my husband used his corporate account," Grace replied. "Is there something wrong?" "Ma'am, we have strict protocols regarding first-class travel," Veronica explained with artificial patience. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding when the reservation was made. Grace felt the first stirrings of irritation. "There's no misunderstanding. I have a confirmed first-class ticket in my hand." Two well-dressed businessmen lined up behind Grace, their expensive watches gleaming in the fluorescent light. They exchanged glances as they overheard the conversation. Veronica lowered her voice. "Our first-class experience is designed for our premium customers. There are certain standards we maintain." "Excuse me?" Grace's voice remained steady despite her growing indignation. "I can offer you a seat in economy," Veronica continued, her tone suggesting she was doing Grace a favor. "Same destination, just a different seating arrangement." Grace stood straighter. "That won't be necessary. My ticket is for first class, and that's where I'll be sitting." Veronica's friendly facade hardened. "Ma'am, I don't appreciate your tone. Perhaps you'd like to speak with my supervisor." "Yes," Grace replied calmly. "I think that would be best." Veronica picked up a phone, never breaking eye contact with Grace. "Richard, we have a situation at counter 3. Could you come over?" She hung up, a small, satisfied smile playing at her lips. "Mr. Hargrove will be with you shortly." Grace nodded, pulled out her phone, and checked the time. Her flight wasn't for another 2 hours, but she knew from experience that these situations could escalate quickly. Behind her, the line was growing, and curious onlookers had begun to take notice of the developing drama at the first-class counter. Richard Hargrove arrived within minutes, his polished shoes clicking authoritatively against the tile floor. He was a tall man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a navy suit that screamed corporate authority. The golden pin on his lapel indicated his senior position. "What seems to be the problem here, Veronica?" he asked, his voice measured and professional. Before Veronica could answer, Grace spoke up. "There's no problem with my ticket, sir. Your colleague seems to think I don't belong in first class." Hargrove's eyes darted from Grace to her ticket, then to her casual attire. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Mrs. he began. "Wellington," Grace supplied. "Grace Wellington." Hargrove nodded, his corporate smile firmly in place. Mrs. Wellington, I understand your frustration, but we do have certain protocols in place. Veronica was just following procedure. What procedure requires questioning a valid ticket? Grace asked. Hargrove lowered his voice, leaning in slightly. We occasionally encounter irregularities with our premium services. People attempting to upgrade without authorization or using tickets that were obtained through unconventional means. Grace's patience was wearing thin. Are you suggesting I stole this ticket? Not at all, Hargrove backpedaled smoothly. But perhaps there was a system error. These things happen. A small crowd had gathered now, watching the exchange with undisguised interest. The two businessmen behind Grace were whispering to each other, one occasionally glancing at his expensive watch. I've been standing here for 15 minutes, Grace said. Could you please verify my reservation and let me proceed to my gate? Hargrove exchanged a look with Veronica, who tilted her head slightly. He turned back to Grace. I'm afraid we'll need additional verification for this ticket. Perhaps a call to your husband to confirm the booking details. This is ridiculous, Grace stated flatly. The ticket is legitimate. The reservation is confirmed. What more do you need? Hargrove's pleasant demeanor slipped a notch. Mrs. Wellington, I'm trying to be accommodating, but your attitude isn't helping. If you can't provide additional verification, I'll have to ask you to step aside and let other passengers through. Grace stood her ground. I'm not moving until you honor my ticket. Hargrove sighed dramatically. Security, he called, gesturing to a nearby officer. The uniformed man, Officer Miller, according to his badge, approached with a hand resting casually on his belt. Is there a problem here? Officer Miller asked, his eyes already assessing Grace as the source of the disturbance. This passenger is refusing to comply with our verification procedures and is holding up the line, Hargrove explained smoothly. We may need to escort her to the main terminal area. Grace felt heat rising to her cheeks, but kept her voice level. I have a valid first-class ticket. They're refusing to honor it because of how I'm dressed. Officer Miller's expression remained impassive. Ma'am, if the airline staff has requested additional verification— This is discrimination, Grace interrupted. Several onlookers nodded in agreement. Hargrove's smile turned cold. That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Wellington. Perhaps you'd like to speak with our customer relations team after your flight. For now, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside or accept an economy seat. Grace looked from Hargrove to Officer Miller, then to the growing line of impatient travelers behind her. The public humiliation was clearly calculated. Make an example of her. Remind everyone that the premium experience was only for those who fit the part. Fine, she said, reaching for her phone. Let me make a call. Making a call won't change our policy, Mrs. Wellington, Hargrove said with thinly veiled condescension. But feel free if it makes you feel better. Grace didn't bother responding. She stepped to the side, phone in hand, while Veronica called the next passenger forward with an overly cheerful, I can help whoever's next. Officer Miller didn't leave, hovering nearby as if Grace might cause a scene. The businessmen who had been behind her were now being processed with exceptional courtesy. Veronica's entire demeanor transformed into warm professionalism. Grace scrolled through her contacts and pressed the call button. After 2 rings, a crisp female voice answered. Mrs. Wellington, good morning. Rebecca, I need to speak with Edward, Grace said, keeping her voice low but firm. Of course, he's just finishing a call. 1 moment, please. Hargrove glanced over, a satisfied smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. He clearly thought she was saving face by pretending to call someone important. Grace? Edward's warm voice came through the line. Is everything all right? Aren't you supposed to be boarding soon? That's why I'm calling, Grace replied, turning slightly away from the prying eyes of Hargrove and Officer Miller. The airline is refusing to honor my first-class ticket. They're insisting I need additional verification or suggesting I take an economy seat. There was a brief pause. Did you tell them who you are? Edward asked, his tone shifting subtly. No, Grace answered, and I shouldn't have to. The ticket is valid, Edward. Of course it is. She could hear the controlled anger in his voice. Put me on speaker. That won't be necessary, Grace said. Let me handle— Grace. It was the tone he rarely used, the one that had made boardrooms full of executives fall silent. Speaker, now. Grace sighed and lowered the phone, tapping the speaker icon. "You're on speaker, Edward." "Who am I speaking with?" Edward's voice filled the small space, commanding even through the phone's speaker. Hargrove, noticing the change, stepped closer with renewed interest. "This is Richard Hargrove, supervisor for Atlantic Airways at JFK. Who am I speaking with?" "Edward Sinclair, CEO of Sinclair Global Investments and majority shareholder of Pinnacle Holdings, which, if I'm not mistaken, acquired a controlling interest in your parent company last year." The color drained from Hargrove's face. Veronica, who had been processing another passenger, froze mid-transaction. Even Officer Miller took a small step back. "Mr. Sinclair, sir," Hargrove stammered, "there seems to have been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Edward cut in, his voice ice cold. "My wife showed you a valid first-class ticket. You chose to humiliate her because she wasn't wearing designer labels. Is that correct?" The terminal seemed to grow quieter, as if everyone was holding their breath. Passengers in line had stopped pretending not to listen and were openly watching the unfolding drama. "Sir, we have certain protocols." "Don't insult my intelligence with protocols, Mr. Hargrove. I fly over 200,000 miles a year with your airline. I know every protocol. What's happening there is blatant discrimination." A woman in line behind the counter whispered to her companion, "Did he say Sinclair? As in Sinclair Global?" Hargrove was visibly sweating now. "Mr. Sinclair, please allow me to personally escort Mrs. Wellington to the first-class lounge immediately. We value your business tremendously." "What I value, Mr. Hargrove, is respect," Edward interrupted. "Something you've failed to show my wife. Now, I want to speak with your regional director. Not tomorrow, not in an hour. Now." Hargrove's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. "Sir, Ms. Thompson isn't on site today, but I can assure you—" "Find her," Edward commanded. The entire check-in area had gone silent, all eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. Hargrove was frantically tapping on his smartphone. His earlier confidence evaporated. "I'm texting Ms. Thompson now, Mr. Sinclair. She'll be on the line momentarily." His voice had risen an octave. Edward's voice remained steady through the phone. "And while we wait, I want to understand exactly what happened. Grace, tell me everything." Grace met Hargrove's panicked gaze with calm determination. "When I presented my ticket, Veronica immediately questioned how I obtained it. She implied I didn't meet their standards for first class. When I refused to accept an economy seat, Mr. Hargrove here called security and threatened to have me removed." Veronica had stopped processing passengers entirely, her face ashen. Nearby staff members were whispering urgently to each other, and a young man in an Atlantic Airways uniform was furiously typing on a tablet. "I see," Edward's voice was dangerously calm. "Mr. Hargrove, do you deny any of this?" "Sir, there was a misunderstanding about the verification process." "Answer the question," Edward cut in. "Did you or did you not judge my wife by her appearance and attempt to deny her the first-class seat I personally booked?" The silence that followed was deafening. Officer Miller had backed away completely, suddenly finding something fascinating to examine on the far wall. "Mr. Sinclair," Hargrove finally managed, "I deeply apologize for any misunderstanding. Our staff undergoes extensive training on customer service, and this situation does not reflect our company values." A trim woman in her 60s approached rapidly from the direction of the airline offices, her face a mask of professional concern. Her name tag identified her as Victoria Thompson, Regional Director. "Ms. Thompson has arrived," Hargrove announced with palpable relief. Thompson gently took the phone from Hargrove. "Mr. Sinclair, this is Victoria Thompson. I just received the alert and came immediately. Please accept my deepest apologies for this situation." "Ms. Thompson," Edward acknowledged. "I'm listening." Thompson's voice was steady but urgent. "I assure you we will investigate this incident thoroughly. In the meantime, Mrs. Wellington will receive our highest level of service. If you'll allow me, I'll personally escort her to our Celestial Lounge and ensure she boards with priority." "That's not enough," Edward replied. "I want immediate action regarding the staff involved." Thompson nodded, though Edward couldn't see it. "Of course, sir. Mr. Hargrove and Ms. Palmer will be placed on administrative leave pending investigation, effective immediately." A small gasp escaped Veronica's lips. Hargrove's face contorted in disbelief. "But Victoria—" he began to protest. Thompson silenced him with a sharp look before returning her attention to the phone. Mr. Sinclair, I'll also arrange for our CEO to call you directly this afternoon to discuss how we can make this right. Throughout the exchange, Grace stood quietly, observing the rapid transformation around her. The same people who had been ready to humiliate her minutes ago were now falling over themselves to appease her husband. Grace, Edward spoke directly to her now. Are you all right with this arrangement for now? Grace considered for a moment. Yes, but I'd like something else as well. Name it, Thompson said immediately. A written apology to be delivered to every passenger who witnessed this incident, acknowledging the discrimination and outlining the steps your airline is taking to address it. Thompson blinked in surprise, but quickly recovered. Of course, Mrs. Wellington, we can certainly arrange that. A murmur of approval rippled through the onlookers. An elderly man standing nearby gave Grace a subtle nod of respect. My wife's wishes will be met to the letter, Edward confirmed. And Miss Thompson, I'll be expecting that call from your CEO. Don't disappoint me twice in one day. Absolutely not, sir, Thompson assured him. Mrs. Wellington will be treated with the utmost respect. As Thompson ended the call, the dynamics in the terminal had completely reversed. Now, all eyes were on Grace Wellington, no longer as a curiosity, but as someone of consequence and power. Victoria Thompson personally escorted Grace past the security checkpoint, apologizing profusely with every step. Behind them, Hargrove and Veronica were being led to the administrative offices, their faces blank with shock. The Celestial Lounge is just this way, Mrs. Wellington, Thompson said, gesturing to a discreet doorway with frosted glass. I've informed the staff of your arrival. Anything you desire will be provided immediately. Grace nodded, but remained silent. The satisfaction of vindication was tempered by the knowledge that it wasn't truly her they were responding to. It was Edward's name, Edward's money, Edward's power. As they entered the exclusive lounge, conversations halted momentarily as heads turned toward them. The news had traveled fast. Thompson ushered Grace to the most private seating area, where a server immediately appeared. Mrs. Wellington, welcome to the Celestial Lounge. My name is Michael, and I'll be personally attending to your needs today. May I bring you something to drink? Just water, thank you, Grace replied. After the server departed, Thompson lowered her voice. Mrs. Wellington, I want to personally assure you that what happened today is being addressed at the highest levels. By the time you land in San Francisco, there will be significant changes implemented. Grace met the director's gaze. This isn't about me, Ms. Thompson. This is about a culture that judges people based on appearances. How many others without billionaire husbands have your staff mistreated? Thompson had the grace to look uncomfortable. Your point is well taken. I promise you, this will lead to a systematic review of our practices. As Thompson excused herself to make arrangements, Grace's phone buzzed with a text from Edward. How are you really feeling? She smiled, typing back. Like I just witnessed a corporate earthquake. You should have seen their faces. His response came quickly. I'd rather see yours. In about 6 hours? Looking forward to it, she replied. Grace settled into the plush chair, observing the lounge around her. The same first-class passengers who might have judged her earlier now cast furtive, curious glances her way. A few tapped on their phones, undoubtedly searching for information about Edward Sinclair's wife. Michael returned with her water, served in a crystal glass on a silver tray. Mrs. Wellington, I've been informed that the captain would like to personally welcome you aboard when it's time for boarding. Is that acceptable? Grace smiled. That won't be necessary. I'd prefer to board like everyone else. Of course, Michael replied, though his expression suggested this was an unusual request from a VIP. As Grace sipped her water, she reflected on the morning's events. The discrimination had been real and hurtful, but the response had been swift. Perhaps some good would come of it, not just for her, but for others who didn't have the Sinclair name to shield them. 6 hours later, Grace's flight touched down at San Francisco International Airport. As the plane taxied to the gate, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to San Francisco. Local time is 2:14 p.m. with clear skies and 72 degrees. We'd like to thank you for flying with Atlantic Airways today, especially Mrs. Grace Wellington Sinclair. It's been our honor to serve you. Several passengers turned to look at Grace, who kept her gaze fixed on the window, pretending not to notice. The announcement was unnecessary. Another example of the airline overcompensating. As she disembarked, the entire crew lined up to bid her farewell, their smiles almost painfully eager. At the jet bridge, she was surprised to find not just Edward waiting, but also James Hutchinson, the CEO of Atlantic Airways, looking both apologetic and anxious. "Mrs. Wellington," Hutchinson began, extending his hand, "I cannot express how deeply sorry I am about your experience this morning." Grace shook his hand briefly. "Mr. Hutchinson, I appreciate your concern." Edward stepped forward, wrapping an arm around Grace's waist. His kiss on her cheek was both a greeting and a statement to everyone watching. "James and I have had a productive conversation," Edward said. "Atlantic Airways will be implementing new training programs focusing on eliminating bias in customer service." Hutchinson nodded eagerly. "We're also revamping our complaint procedures and establishing an independent review board for discrimination claims." "And Hargrove?" "Veronica?" Grace asked. "Their employment has been terminated," Hutchinson confirmed, "effective immediately." As they walked toward the exit, Edward whispered, "He flew in personally when he heard what happened. Their stock dropped 3 points this morning after someone posted about the incident online." Grace shook her head. "All this because I wore jeans instead of designer clothes." "No," Edward corrected gently. "All this because they thought appearance determined worth, and you proved them wrong." Outside, a sleek black car waited to whisk them away. As they settled into the back seat, Grace finally relaxed, leaning against Edward's shoulder. "You know what the strangest part is?" she mused. "If they had just treated me with basic respect, none of this would have happened." Edward squeezed her hand. "That's usually how it goes. The simplest courtesy costs nothing, but the lack of it can cost everything." Sometimes the most powerful people are the ones you'd never suspect. Grace Wellington's story reminds us all to look beyond appearances and treat everyone with dignity and respect. Have you ever been judged unfairly or witnessed someone being discriminated against? Share your experience in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life tales of underestimated people who prove their worth in unexpected ways. Where are you watching from today? Let us know. Our community spans the globe, united by our appreciation for these powerful moments of truth. Remember, true class isn't about what you wear. It's about how you treat others. Silent, all eyes fixed on the unfolding scene.